thank you for tuning in to another episode of the African American Voices of Charles County, presented by the Charles County NAACP. I'm your host, Joe Sampson Jr., and my guest today is Miss Louise Booth Webb. Ms. Webb is a longtime resident who may be small in stature, but has one of the largest footprints in the county. Today, we will discuss her history in the county through the lens of her book entitled Life on the Farm with Grandma and Grandpa, and her desire to keep some of the oldest stories of the county alive. Ms. Webb, thank you for being here today. I greatly appreciate it. It was interesting getting in. There was some confusion, but you are here, and I'm thank you for being here today.
I am happy to be here today.
Wonderful. So let me start by when I decided to create this show, I pulled a lot of what I got from President Sweat, calling seasoned freedom fighters. I spoke to them and I asked them names of individuals who I should speak with when I wanted to create this interview series. And without a shadow of a doubt, if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say 100% of the individuals said that the first person I should speak to is you.
And was I the first person?
You were the second, but mainly
That's
because
okay.
the president of the NAACP was the first. And so what I found was how the people of Charles County revered you, and how they held you in such great regard in terms of being a local historian. And if I wanted to know what Charles County was like, to put a timestamp on it, that I should definitely talk to you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to speak with you too.
Wonderful. All right, so we're gonna start. I had the honor and the pleasure of reading your book. You gave me a copy of it. I was able to come out to the farm,
Right.
and see what led to the writing of this book. But before we get deep in the book, because there's a lot of stuff in here, and I say that because I'm a northern kid. I'm a transplant to this
Okay,
area.
that's okay. We love transplants.
Absolutely. And so being that transplant and coming from the city down to, Charles County, I had an idea of what life was like. But your book really put it into perspective. So let's start from the very beginning. The book says that you were born in Charles County.
Correct.
Where in Charles County were you?
Bryantown, one of the historical towns.
Bryantown,
Maryland.
Maryland. Okay. And so you were born here, but did you immediately stay, or where did you?
I stayed here until I finished high school, Belle Allen High School.
Belle Alton, right? Which, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the two all-black high schools pre-civil rights era.
Right. Two.
Correct. Okay. You were born here, but you moved away for a little bit, correct?
Yeah, I moved on after I graduated. I moved on. I went into Silver Spring, got a job there, stayed there until during the war, Second World War. And then I went into New York.
To New York.
That's right.
All right. All right. So
I was going from the country to the city.
From the country, you went the opposite way that
That's
I
right.
came. Okay, nice. So let's start at the very beginning. In the book, you point out that you were born here, but you moved to Fort Washington, and you lived in Fort Washington with your mother, your father, and four other siblings.
Right.
Okay.
Five of us.
What was that? What was that like? That early time?
That early time, as far as I can remember, was fine. We lived in a one-room school, no water, no electric, and no heat. All of this we had to provide. So it was fine. I helped my mom on the farm picking strawberries. We mom, dad went to work on the farm, and so we sort of, I guess, took care of ourselves.
Right. And so in the book, you talk about the one-room schoolhouse and how it was transformed into a two-bedroom.
No, it was not transformed. It was like, well, yeah, we did have two
Mhm.
bedrooms. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Um, and you told an interesting story, and what I find interesting is that in the you talked about how you got milk in the book.
Yes, yes, I did. There was a kind lady that lived across the field on a farm.
Hmm.
So whenever she had milk to spare, she would hang the flag out the window, two-story house, and my brother and I would go over and get the milk. And free milk was a happy,
That was
happy
a happy
time for
happy
us.
time.
And we bought it and took it back home in a jug.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's that's pretty interesting. And so you got milk basically based on the availability from
From the
this
lady.
lady that
Uh-huh.
lived across the
Until
field
I moved back to the farm and had my own cow.
until you move back to the farm. And we are definitely going to get to the farm
Okay.
because there are some there's some things. So let me ask this question. One of the things you make mention of in this book, you do a great job of talking about the foods that you enjoyed to eat. Um, and in Fort Washington, because you were, if I'm not mistaken, you were there till you were about 8 or 9.
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Hmm. Um, I'm just going to read a quick excerpt. You said that your dad would pick, well, from the nearby Potomac River and Piscataway Creek, that there were plenty of fish, wild game such as rabbits, squirrels, muskrats,
That's right.
possum, ducks, birds. And one thing you made sure to note, that there was an abundant amount of delicious mud turtles.
Yes, turtles. That's right. And they,
Turtles.
they still sell turtles in some of the, I think, Annapolis seafood. Turtles, and they also sell muskrat.
Really?
So all of that was our food supply.
Because you
That's right. We
basically
didn't have,
lived off the
and number
land.
one, we didn't have money to buy other place things.
Mhm.
So that was there for us free.
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
was good.
Life was good.
Life was good.
You roamed around, you spent quite a time there, and then you talked about Sundays at coming down to Bryantown to visit your grandparents
Yeah,
and
that
what
was
that was.
after my mother passed, and we moved from the one-room school to a five-bedroom house with 200 acres of land. So
200.
you see, we had plenty of place to roam and
Mhm.
have fun.
And how was that? Because you also talk about your cousins and other family would make that same journey down.
Yeah, they would come. We would all gather at my grandmother's on Sunday,
Mhm,
and to a nice, delicious meal.
mhm,
We had to catch our chickens and heat the water. All of this is what we uh, had fun doing because we
mhm.
had to chase the chickens, ring the chicken snack. In fact, my grandmother did that, and but she taught us as we grew up how to do all of these things.
Yeah.
So she taught me many survival skills. So it was a lot of fun. Cousins come, and when they got ready to go, we would tease them because
Yeah.
there was 10 in that family, but it wasn't 10 at that time.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of fun when the cousins came.
You talk a lot about your grandparents, and we'll get to that a little later because I wanna talk specifically about um, your grandmother and your grandfather and what they meant to you, what they instilled in you, and some of the life lessons that I assume you carry with you to this day. Um, and so one of the stories I found quite interesting was how you would get to church.
Okay, my grandmother would tell us to walk down the hill. So we walked down the hill, my brother and I, and we got in a buggy and we rode to church with the buggy. And of course, when it was cold, there used to be a lantern and there
Mhm.
was a nice warm blanket. So we had a nice warm buggy ride to the church.
Now, in the book, the funny part of that story, which I thought was incredible, was that you said your grandmother would send you all ahead because she knew that someone would pick up two little kids
Yeah,
walking to
that's
church,
right.
right? And so that the only way, because there wasn't enough space
In the
in,
car, yeah, that's right. So she sent us walking.
and what kind of car was this?
Nan was way back, I guess probably, I don't know exactly, but I
Mhm.
do know my grandfather had a Model T at one time.
A Model T.
That's right, 1929, during the Depression.
Wow.
So
That was a
we
pretty big
got to
deal.
church, yes.
Yeah. So they got to church,
Yep, and
and
we
they
did
knew
too.
that you two,
That
and
we
you
were
said the two of you. So who was the other person that
my
went with
oldest
you?
brother.
Your oldest brother.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you and your oldest brother walked down, and then the
Got
other three
uh-huh.
were able to.
No, they stayed home with
Oh,
somebody.
they stayed home.
There's
with
always somebody in the house.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I like that. So I want to go back again to the sustenance, the food that you and your family relied on. You know that today the concept of getting food is going to the grocery store. The concept now with technology is having food delivered to you without ever leaving your home. Yours was a little different.
That's right.
What I found was that you and your family grew everything. You
Yes.
lived 100% off of the land.
The land. We lived off the land. There were all kinds of berries, fruit trees, berries, you name it, and we had all types of fruit trees. So we had that, and of course, we grew the vegetables, and we had the animals to slaughter, the cow, and the hogs, the chickens, the ducks, the turkeys, you name it.
Wow.
It was a big farm, remember? And so
you mentioned that your grandfather, who had a number of jobs, but one of those jobs being the butcher, and since we're still talking about food, how he would slaughter a few hogs.
No,
once or twice?
usually my grandfather killed about 8 hogs.
Okay.
And I had to stay home from school to help to put all that away, make the sauces, make the whatever that we needed to make.
And he did it in that amount so that way it would carry you all through the year?
Carry us through the winter, yeah, until next winter.
Until
but one thing about that time, then farmers helped each other.
Yeah.
That's how we made it. Farmers helped each other. You know, you just couldn't do it alone. So there might be 4 different farmers that would come and help. And it made the work easier.
Absolutely.
Even in the house, people came to help.
And that's pretty interesting because at the time we're talking about we're talking about race relations being what they were in terms of the black residents and the white residents. But in this, what I find very interesting about your book is that there is no division in terms of taking care of each other when it comes to food. Right? You talk a lot about you and the neighbor sharing harvests, sharing meat, sharing wood, things like that.
Yeah, that's one thing about back then, around in 1939, we cared. We cared for each other. We shared. You know, it's nothing like caring and sharing. And we, at that time, the Germans were coming over. So we were surrounded by people from Germany, you know, and so we cared and we shared.
Wonderful. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to dive into talking about your grandmother and your grandfather and the regard you have for them along with your father. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
All right. Thanks for coming back. So I'm back here having a conversation with Miss Webb, and we just finished talking about um, your life so far and how you sustain life via food and sustenance when you move from Fort Washington down here to Bryantown. But I wanted to transition to something in your book because the book is really about there's a regard that you hold for your grandmother and your grandfather. And in the book, it says that you moved down to Bryantown after your mother passed away, and your father came down um, and and brought you and your siblings to your grandparents.
That's right.
Um, when he did that, he didn't stay with you all.
No, he didn't. He had to go off to a job in Newtown. So he went to a job working at a mill. So we went with grandma, and plus she had 14 children of her own. She reared 12, and here was 5 of us.
So when you showed up to grandma's house, there were 12
No.
children.
Okay. She had 12.
She had already
children.
had 12,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, because
Yeah.
your parents were one of those 12.
Uh-huh.
You talk in the book. You mentioned that your grandmother, when the 5 of you first came down, that she went to see a lawyer.
That's right. She went to see a lawyer because she said that she didn't see where she could take the 5 of us. She went to a lawyer in Bryantown. His name was Mr. Mudd. And he told my grandmother to keep us, that the Lord would provide. And the Lord did provide. We did not go to a foster home. People began to give us a lot of hand-me-downs. I'd call hand-me-downs or whatever. But anyway, we survived. And it was through that lawyer that we stayed together. And I must say this because just recently, this same lawyer, Mr. Mudd, from Bryantown, I met his granddaughter.
Wow.
And she'd heard of me, and she was so surprised. And she came, and I told her, because of her great-grandfather, that I am here and thankful for what he did for us.
Wow. There were a few anecdotes that you chose to live by that you got from your grandmother. One of those obviously is the golden rule.
That's right.
There was, and you talk about it again, the Lord will provide. But you also had learn to paddle your own canoe.
And I'm still paddling my canoe.
Hey, you're still paddling your canoe. 95 years later, that canoe is still going, right?
That's right.
Wonderful. You also mentioned that in the same time, your grandmother adopted a saying of no waste, no want.
That's right. So we waste nothing. Nothing was waste, not even the crumbs from the table. She said, go out and throw them up beside the tree for the ants. So we do that and watch the little ants taking the food in the ground.
Wow.
So we didn't waste nothing.
Nothing.
One thing, nothing was waste. We recycled back then. Corn cobs for the start the fire. Corn cobs to put handles on. They had wooden handles, so if the wooden handle probably got burned off, we used the corn cob. Corn cob were used for a lot of different things.
And what I find very interesting is when I came to the farm. Well, let's discuss the farm. The farm was how big?
200 acres.
200 acres. And you mentioned that a lot of your neighbors were Germans,
right?
And so as we spoke briefly in the past segment about race relations, the reason why you all were able to you all were able to interact with each other and share is because in essence your family was on equal or greater playing field, correct?
Yeah, and we grew up together. And my grandmother never instilled no hatred in us. We didn't have any of that. She would say, love each other.
And clearly.
And clearly that's the answer. Answer today. Love one another.
Love one another. And so for instance, like we talked about those Sunday mornings going to church,
Mhm.
the church you attended was St. Mary's.
St. Mary's, Bryantown, and I still go to that church.
You still attend
Yes,
St.
yes.
So, well, I have a question. You in the book you said your father purchased a pew. That was in the back. Your grandfather.
Back then
sorry.
you had to, yeah, that's right.
So you had to buy a pew to sit
Yeah,
down.
you had to sit down. Yeah,
Wow.
you had to follow the rules and regulations,
Mhm.
whatever.
Whatever.
So
it was.
that should be done today.
Yeah.
Would be a better world.
I will agree with that. It's hard to fight against that. Your grandfather. Let's briefly talk about him. You hold him along with your, like I said, your
Yeah,
grandmother.
mhm.
You held her in such high regard in terms
Mhm.
of what she instilled in you. You
Mhm.
mentioned earlier that she taught you a lot of things.
Yeah. But one of the things, and I often think about them today, how did they obtain the knowledge that they had? My grandmother being a midwife,
Mhm.
who taught her? Who taught her how to sew? But I'm sure it was her parents,
Yeah.
those that came before her, knowing how to do the cooking and being a midwife. You know.
It was passed down.
Mhm. And yeah, passed down. Yeah, I'm sure. And my grandfather being, he would shoe the horses. You know, just knew everything. So everything was passed down. But you wonder, say, didn't go to school and got all this knowledge. But like you say, it was passed down.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So your grandfather had a number of jobs. He was a tobacco farmer.
That's right.
Um,
Planted corn, tobacco, not soybeans, corn and tobacco and wheat.
and wheat,
Uh-huh.
which he sold for.
No, we took it to the mill, so we'd take it to the grit mill, and he'd bring it back and put it in a large barrel, and that's what we had for the winter.
He was a butcher, which we talked about.
Yeah.
He owned a sawmill.
Yes. And he sold it, I guess. I remember the sawmill, you know, and going down and seeing the sawmill.
Mm-hmm.
I have a piece in my backyard now, a big old wheel.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he did have a sawmill. The houses that we built, not the house I lived in, but all the outhouses was lumber from the farm. Built my brother's house. He built my brother's house even in Brandywine.
Wow.
So it was a lot of work on the farm.
It was a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. But when winter, you had something to look forward to, because when winter came, you could kind of like relax, although you were stripping tobacco.
Right. You mentioned that you spent before you left for school,
Mm-hmm.
which you said you walked 3 miles
That's
one
right.
way
Mm-hmm.
to school. But before you left for school every day, there was a list of chores.
That's right. And I knew them and I did them.
And you did them all
Mm-hmm.
before you made it, and you weren't late for school.
Wasn't late for school, nope. And after you got to school, you had to start your own fire.
In the middle of the school.
We had a big stove. It wasn't sitting in the middle. Our stove was sitting in the back.
In the back. Okay.
Yeah, so we had to, let's go. And we had nuns. We had 2 nuns that came up, because it was a Catholic school. We had 2 nuns that would come walk over in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and get warm, start school. Mm-hmm.
Wow. There was a great story in here about your dad and when he would come and visit you from
The
where he
mill.
was from the mill.
Mm-hmm.
The great story about how he set up the fishing trap
Mm-hmm.
to keep fresh fish in there always.
That's right. In the summer. In the summertime, yeah.
In the summer.
When we got ready for fresh fish, we went and opened the trap and got the fish.
So he would catch the fish.
That's right. Put it
and
in
then
the trap.
put them in the trap for them to stay there
That's
until
right.
you all were ready to come get them.
Not that many. It wasn't that many.
But just enough for a treat.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
They were traps set for everything. Like the traps for the hawk that was catching the rabbit. And so you had that trap to catch the hawk so he wouldn't eat your rabbit.
Because you ate the rabbit,
Yeah.
so you could have the hawk eat your rabbit, right? If the hawk
Yeah.
ate your rabbit, you could
Wouldn't
eat
have
it.
yeah.
Wow. So you laid a trap for the hawk.
Mm-hmm. You set it on a post Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yep, there was a lot. And when you got the animals like the possum, I remember my and the coon, the raccoon, you would skin it and put it on a board, and we would take it to the plate, and my father would sell.
Wow.
But you stretch the hide over the board, and then when it dried, then you take it to the plate and sell it.
And sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you got 2 for 1. You got food
That's
and you
right.
got some money from it.
That's right. That's right.
As long as the hawk didn't come
Mm-hmm.
in. Nice.
And my grandparents would wash, and we would, before we went to school, we would have to walk over to our neighbor and get the basket and bring it. My grandmother would wash the clothes.
Right. And
And
you
that's
did
what she
mention
got
that with the washboard
Yeah.
and all of that. And so let's fast forward a little bit. It's time, you're getting older. You're now going to Belle Alton, and it's time to go to high school. And you have to choose. Did you have a choice to choose one of the two, or Belle Alton was just the closest
I went to Belle Alton. I went to Pamunkey. I stayed with my cousins for a week, and I went to Pamunkey in 1938. In 1939, I went to Belle Alton because the bus came through Bryantown. I could get the bus. I walked about 1.25 miles and got the bus at Bryantown, and rode 18 miles to Belle Alton High School.
Wow.
And one day I missed the bus, and of course I had gotten the bicycle, as you see on the front of the book.
Yes.
And so I rode the bicycle 18 miles.
You rode this bicycle?
That bicycle. I rode that bicycle.
Technically
and it
36.
came back on the bus.
Oh, you came back on the bus.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
So I think
That
of
is
that
some
about
pedaling.
how I rode that bicycle to school. And it was a used bicycle.
Very, very.
And I worked for $3 a week, but I saved that money.
Saved it.
And I try to teach children today to save for the rainy day.
Absolutely.
But they don't believe a rainy day is coming.
You know, I'll be honest, I didn't learn to save until later in life. I wish I would have learned it a lot earlier. I'm sure I would have been a lot further along. But $3 a week, and because of that, you saved that.
That's right.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about life after the farm, and then what brought you back to the farm and what you are doing now. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So we'll be right back.
We're the NAACP. We don't follow movements, we define movements.
We are back. We're back to finish up where we left off. So we left off with you leaving. Well, we left off with a great bicycle ride for the record. Even during the break, I couldn't help but have a little more discussion about that. As a person who cycles, the concept of riding a bike 18 miles with no gear with no gears is pretty awesome. But you went to Belle Alton. After graduating high school, you left the area. Where did you head?
Oh, I went into Silver Spring, and from Silver Spring, I went into New York.
To New York. What brought you or took you to Silver Spring?
What took me to Silver Spring was a better job, going from $6 to $10. And what took me into New York was that during the war, and my aunt needed someone to stay with her because her husband was in the service.
Okay.
So that's why I ended up in New York. And then I ended up going to practical nurse school, Central School for Practical Nursing. And it was a quick job, quick subject, I should say. Anyway, they cut it to, instead of 12 months, it was 9 months. We done it in 9 months because of the war, and they needed nurses.
Wow.
So I done it in 9 months, worked a while, and then came back to Washington, D.C. Got married in 1948, and then moved to Waldorf in 1950.
1950. So where were you? Where did you stay when you were in New York City?
Well, I started in Manhattan, right off of Central Avenue, but then because the house had been robbed several times, I went into Bronx, New York, and lived with an aunt for $2 a week, room and board. So I could save my. That's right. That's how much she charged us: $2 a week, room and board, and I was able to send my money to the Hughesville Bank.
Wow. 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 So you were making $10. You were making more than $10.
Well, when I went into New York, when I completed that 9-month nursing course, clear money was $37. I think I got $37 a month. I think that's what it was. But see, I was on campus, so I didn't need to spend any money for food.
Right.
So that was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money. And you only needed $2 a week, which
That's
is
right.
what, $8 a month?
I came back to Maryland. I had $1,000 in the bank in 1949. Wow. So that was a lot of money. I was rich then.
You were rich. Wow. Wow. And so you decided to come back. Did you stay in the nursing field when you came back to?
Yes, I did. I worked in D.C. General Hospital in Washington for 30 years. And then I came back to Charles County and worked in Charles County Nursing Home. I went from premature babies to adults. And it was a wonderful experience. And the reason I left there was I told them I'd work one day volunteer, one day a week, but I ended up volunteering every day. So I said, no, I can't take this. So then I done a little bit of private duty, which was super, 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 because I worked for some lovely people. And then I finally decided that, I've had 38 years of nursing. I'm sick of it. I don't want to see the hospital or anything. So I decided to bought a house there in Waldorf. Wow. $8,000 when I bought the house. $9 for a year's tax. Unbelievable. But anyway.
$8,000 for the house.
House was a little house, 2 bedrooms, but it survived. I mean, we survived in.
$9 a year for tax.
That's right. Yep, that's what it was. So then when I began, and I worked with, I tell you who I worked when I joined the senior, it was called senior, what was it? Anyway, dealing with seniors. I worked with that program on 8 years. I had no idea. I worked with that. I worked with foster care. Whatever I could get in, I got in. Because, at one time, all the gates were closed for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't go in them. But when they opened the gates, I decided to go in every gate but the hospital.
Every last one of them.
Every last one of them. And that's why I got so much involved, because I didn't know. I didn't have the opportunity. So when the opportunity knocked, I went in, and I still do. If it's there and I want to learn about it, I go.
That's
and
fantastic.
One of the things I would do when I went, I would be alone. Many hurdles I had to jump.
Absolutely.
But I took my little pen and pencil and I'd be writing. And when I got there, being the only African American, someone would say, and who are you representing? And I said, myself. I'd be writing, I said, representing myself. And so I've had a lot of experience with affirmative action, but I kept plugging.
Absolutely.
When I was asked the question, why do you want to be here or be there? I said, I want to be able to look across the table, not be under the table and looking up. At one time I was asked, well, what are we going to do? I said, just open the gate due to circumstances, a lot of times you can't do what you want to do. You have to do what you need to do. So anyway, that was that. But I've been a lot of places. I think I've traveled all over the state of Maryland because we had homemakers. I was in the 4-H. I just joined everything.
Everything.
Red Cross, you name it, March of Dimes, I was there. And I learned a lot, I must say, and still learning.
A lot of what you're saying right now goes back to at least one of these anecdotes you got from your grandma. It follows the path of what we were talking about early on when we were talking about things that were passed down. Much of which you obviously have credited to your grandmother, and hearing the story of where your life has gone, a life of service, a life that is always about helping other people. It's incredible.
I got a lot of that from my grandmother because I can recall our neighbors sometime, they were African American, they would send over to my grandmother. We were there on the farm and we had, and said, my mother said, can you give us a piece of meat and some potatoes? My grandmother was always sharing. And I know I got that from her because I still share today.
You do.
I got some for the farm I live next door to. The lady gave me a box and I come right home and shared it with my neighbors.
When I stopped by to get the book, you showed me the box. You had just received the box of the
vegetables.
The vegetables. You took me out and you gave me some basil, which was really good, and also invited me to come back with my wife and daughters to pick berries.
That's right.
And I'm definitely gonna take you up on that because I can sit here today and tell you that I have never officially picked any wild berries ever in my life. So
there's a lot of new things you will learn as you go.
And I will be appreciative of it when we come over by the farm. There was originally 200 acres, and as we're starting to wrap up, I just wanted to talk about you now live on the farm again. It was originally 200 acres, but now you have.
We just have now. Well, within the family, we have. I would guess. Quite a few. Well, I'd say this. I guess there's 16 acres that we sold next door. So I'm with my son, and that's 3 acres there where I'm with. But then I'm across the highway, grandson, and then across through the woods there's another grandson. So we all and grandson and great grandchildren.
And everyone is still in that vicinity. So the foundation that grandma and grandpa laid way back when is still materializing, coming to fruition to date. Well, we could talk for a lot longer, and we don't have that amount of time. But I want to say that I am incredibly grateful for this conversation. What you've done, what you've given to society, what you've done, and how you are revered. As I started out early, in the very beginning of this episode, I spoke to how the community thinks of you. And without knowing all of your history, hearing today, I can understand why so many people revere you in so many different ways. Because, like you said, if there was an opportunity for you to get involved, you got in it.
One of the things I didn't say, hopefully I'll have an opportunity or find time to write my second book. And that's going to be, it's all about me, the things I've done for others. I've taken care of all nationalities. I had one family in my house because my children were gone. I had one family in my house that I kept 5 months in my house. 2 little boys and a little baby and the mom. I took them wherever I went. If I went to my family for Thanksgiving, I took them with me. I took care of last person I took care of was a homeless teacher living in a car in Charles County. She only lived in it 1 week, but I told her, don't sleep in your car tonight. Come to my house and sleep on a cot. And I've taken care of a lady from Nigeria. So I've taken care of a lot of
A lot of
people
people.
and a lot of storms and waves going out and coming back. Sometimes I thought I wasn't going to come back.
But we are incredibly thankful that you did come back.
Yes, yes.
And for all that you've poured into people, all that you've poured into the community, what you've done to help folks. I will speak on behalf of them because I have the platform right now. And thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wow. Wow. All right. So again, Ms. Webb, I really enjoyed our conversation today. And I thank you very much for your willingness to share your story with the viewers. It was a snapshot of a period in time that most of us have never seen and quite honestly can't really imagine. I'd like to thank my team, Mike, Amber, and Justin for their work behind the camera, and a very special thank you to you, the viewer, for watching. Don't forget, the Charles County NAACP holds its general body meetings on the third Tuesday of every month from 7 to 9 p.m. at the CSM building on Old Washington Road. You can keep up with events, meetings, and general information by visiting our Facebook page, Charles County MD NAACP branch number 7016, or on our website at www.charlescountynaacp.org. Please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, share, any of those things on any of those platforms. And I appreciate you, the viewer, for spending a little time with myself and Ms. Webb today. And I'll see you next time on the African American Voices of Charles County.